What's up and welcome back to the channel. My name is Priscilla. I'm a Nigerian women's wear designer based in the UK. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I'm able to measure and determine how much fabric I need after making a sewing pattern. So if you'd like to see how I get it done, make sure to keep on watching. If you haven't joined the KDVAS fam already, make sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell as well, so you know every week, I mean it, every week when I have new videos on the channel, I get notifications straight to your inbox. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and let's jump straight into this. First garment pattern I'm going to be using to demonstrate today is the one from this crisscross maxi gown. I already have a pattern and a sewing tutorial for this project, so if you haven't seen that, make sure to check it out already. I'm going to be using the patterns from that gown or dress design to show you how to measure the amount of fabric you will need. You also need your tape measure to measure your patterns. You need a notepad and a pen to take down the measurements, and you need a long meter ruler, something that is nice and stiff. And then I also have this long paper tube that's going to be helping me create the guides for this project. So I went ahead to cut down the paper tube to the same length as the meter ruler. That is exactly 1 meter long, so I sort of have a 1 meter dimension that I'm going to be working with. So fabric widths vary. Sometimes you can have narrow fabrics that are 44 inches or wider ones that go up to 60 inches, but today I'm going to be working with a fabric with an imaginary fabric width of 55 inches. So what I've done here is I've divided that measurement by 2 because I normally will cut my patterns on a fold, so I get a pair or one piece in one go. So I'm just spreading both items by 27.5 inches, which is half of 55 inches. Let's say that's the fabric that I'm going to be working with. So you want to have that sort of even measurement from that metal ruler to the paper tube on the other side, so that right there is a meter of fabric. So once you have that ready to go, you can use a measuring tape, you can use whatever object you have that is long. Just ensure that it is a meter long. So I'm going to be grabbing my first pattern piece, which is the top half of this dress, and the top half goes in such a way that the back and the front are connected together, and make sure to align the grain line to the selvage in quotes of your fabric or of the ruler on this plan. So I've gotten my second pattern piece, which is the front skirt pattern, and I'm trying to maximize the fabric. That's something that you really want to do when you are measuring how much fabric you need. You want to try and see how much pattern you can fit into a meter of fabric. So I'm just going in here to measure the skirt piece. I've measured the length and I'm measuring the widest part of that front skirt. I'm going to go ahead and measure the length of the top as well as the widest part. So this would help you know how much fabric you will consume or how much fabric you will need to cut the top half of this dress and the front skirt. So from looking at this, you can already tell that you will need 1 meter to cut just that front skirt and to cut the top half of the dress. So these are the dimensions for the front of the skirt and the dimensions for the top half, and that gives me an estimate of 1 meter of fabric. So the next thing I'm going to work on is the back. So I grabbed my back piece, and because for the back I would need to sort of add a little for the zip allowance on the center back, I'm just going in here to measure the width as well as the length of the back. Because the back is, you only need that one pattern, you have that other extra excess pattern on this other side of the screen, so that is about roughly half a meter of fabric. So if I add this to the dimensions for the front skirt and the top half of the dress, that goes up to about 1.5 to 2 meters of fabric for the main dress, and you use the same amount for your dress lining. The second garment I'm going to be working with is the maxi skirt, which I made a couple of weeks ago, and this is a skirt that has multiple panels. So it's one of those things that you have very few pattern pieces, but you actually need to cut a lot of pieces to join them all together to make the skirt. So I have the patterns here. I'm going to quickly iron them flat and then put them on our 1 meter dimension that we have created to measure how much fabric you will need. So there are two ways you could actually sort of measure this. So the first way is you sort of push the pattern piece towards this edge like so, and then you would sort of flip the pattern to the other side, so you are able to cut 2 sets using this pattern on 1 meter of fabric. So this first method works if you are using a wide fabric, but if your fabric is narrow, you can only cut 1 piece of this pattern on 1 meter of fabric. So I'm just going in here to measure the length and the width of the skirt pattern, and I'm going to take note of that before going in to measure the pocket and the waistband. So I say going for wider fabrics is definitely something that would help you when you have patterns like this, that you could definitely cut more from a meter of fabric compared to just cutting a pair from a meter of fabric if it's a narrow fabric that you have or that you are working with. So once I've taken note of that, I'm going to grab the waistband as well as the pocket. The waistband is slightly wider than our imaginary fabric dimension that we're using, but because it's narrow, I know that I'll be able to fit the waistband and the pocket patterns on about half a meter of fabric. The same way you were able to flip that skirt pattern, you'll be able to flip the pocket pattern, because for the pocket you need a pair for each side of the skirt. And I just went ahead to measure the length as well as the width of that pocket and that waistband, which I would say is roughly half a meter of fabric. So once you have that written down, the estimation that I would say for this skirt is if your fabric is wider than 55 inches, you definitely be able to work with 2.5 meters of fabric. But if you have a narrow fabric that is about 40 to 44 inches, you will need 4 to 4.5 meters of fabric. So some tips to consider: like I said earlier on, go for wider fabrics because that way you're able to get more out of your material. The second tip is that you can actually do this on your table if you have a wide, long table. And the third tip is that you can actually use measuring tape if you don't have like a meter ruler or if you don't have the paper tube. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Share any tips or techniques that you use to measure your patterns to help you know how much fabrics you need in the comment section down below, or any video suggestions that you might have for future tutorials. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.